Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about my proposal, which focuses on feedback in relation to the age of the learners when acquiring a second language. A little background information: most of the studies that have been conducted focus on adult participants, probably because it's easier to get permission to work with adults. And the few that do look at children are mostly observational studies, and the ones that are experimental mention the learners' ages, but they don't really focus on age as a factor and how that contributes to the efficacy of the feedback provided. That's particularly concerning because age is usually considered a factor impacting language acquisition. There are a few theories that go along with that. The critical period hypothesis says that at puberty, your cognitive mechanisms restructure and it becomes more difficult to learn a language. The sensitive period hypothesis doesn't see that. Puberty is a line stopping language acquisition, but more of a spectrum that as you age, it becomes more difficult to learn a language. The idea is that children acquire language more implicitly. They have inherent mechanisms that allow them to learn language, and they're more receptive to just exposure to a language allows them to learn a language, as opposed to adults who gain language more explicitly and have to study grammatical forms. They have to try to obtain language. The reason why that's concerning in relation to feedback is that if children are more capable of learning implicitly, is it more valuable to provide them with more implicit forms of feedback or explicit for adults? The feedback studies with child and adult participants show benefits for explicit feedback through prompting, whereas the feedback studies that are observation-based have shown that children and adults receive more input receiving or implicit feedback. The feedback types that are typical to use in second language acquisition were provided by Ellis in 2016. They were really categorized and narrowed down. So you can see on the left we have input providing feedback, and we have some examples there, and then we have output prompting feedback. The difference between the two is input providing gives you the correct form. So we have the example of the error, yesterday I play in the park. So the target would be yesterday I played in the park. If you provide the correct form for the student, that's the input providing feedback, as opposed to output prompting, where you try to draw that simple past tense from the student. So you can ask them questions, you can repeat back to them with stress, you can elicit with you, what did you do? Which leads us to the research questions. I have two research questions. The first is, do teachers provide different forms of feedback to adult learners and child learners? While there have been studies demonstrating this with a focus on one specific age group, there has yet to be one that compares the two through observation in the same region, in the same area, in the same study. And secondly, I want to focus on the form of corrective feedback, either input providing or output prompting, that's most effective for children and adult learners, doing a comparison through experiment. As participants, we will have 60 adults over 18 years of age and 60 children aged 7 through 12. They will all be low intermediate ESL learners in the United States. And to answer the first research question, it will be observation-based, while the second will be a quasi-experimental design, with 30 adults and children receiving different feedback for comparison. The first research question focuses on observation, as I said, so I will observe existing classes. Those classes will be video recorded and transcribed, and the feedback provided by the teacher to the learners as they make errors will be categorized by two researchers based on the table we saw previously to identify the type of feedback that is being used most frequently. Of course, we will use inter-rater reliability to make sure that there is consistency in the coding of that data. and the correction types will be tallied. And my hypothesis is that both groups will receive more input providing than output prompting feedback, regardless of age, because that's what's been seen in previous research. Also, I believe that adults will receive more feedback than children, because adults are typically provided with activities that are more open-ended, while children participate in more closed activities, potentially because of classroom management and the unreliability of or inconsistency of children in the classroom. The corrective feedback, the experimental portion, will follow a 2x2 design, as I mentioned, and both adults and children will undergo this schedule. So first they will have a pretest that will be audio recorded or video recorded, depending on what they're comfortable with, and they will respond to the question, "What did you do last weekend?" On the second day, they have an interview with the teacher. The learners respond to the question, "How did you celebrate your last birthday?" And that's when the different feedback will be provided by the researcher. In the input providing feedback group, anytime that they make an error with the past tense, the researcher will interrupt and provide them with the simple past tense of the form. In output prompting feedback group, when an error is made, the researcher will interrupt and say, when did that happen? And repeat back the verb as a question. The immediate post-test will have the prompt, "Where did you go on your last family vacation, and what did you do there?" And for the delayed post-test, there is a similar prompt. Each of these will be video recorded or audio recorded, as I mentioned, and the errors will be tallied for comparison. In order to analyze, as I mentioned, video and audio recorded for accurate and inaccurate use, and the percentage of accurate simple past tense use during each test are compared using ANOVA. I hypothesize that for both groups there will be an increase in accuracy. However, I believe that children in the input providing group will make greater gains than the output prompting group, and the inverse will be true for adults. That is, adults will be more receptive to output prompting feedback than input providing feedback. There are some concerns related to internal validity. However, use of the laboratory setting helps to reduce ecological validity, and it allows me to enhance control. So we can see that it actually is the feedback that's causing the change and not something related to the classroom environment, etc. There is a maturation threat, as there's a chance that because these learners are in the United States, they may be exposed to the simple past tense in other contexts. But through use of the quasi-experimental design and random assignment, the feedback treatment might actually increase the saliency of simple past tense outside of the study for both groups, and so we can still claim that that the changes and growth are attributable to the treatment. Finally, in regard to external validity, the findings may not be able to be applied to other classes, and a way to counterbalance this was through observing different classes with different teachers. The low intermediate ESL learners are also likely to be developing skills with the simple past tense, so they may start off by having a little bit of an understanding of this, which is ideal really because we want them to be learning something that they're ready to be learning. The classroom setting and convenience sampling may also have a negative effect on the external validity, but I'm less concerned with that because of the ecological validity of getting a real snapshot of what happens in the regular classroom on the day-to-day. And that's all. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to your feedback.